Hi folks, in this video we're going to look at how to construct a strong essay paragraph. Obviously in a 16 or a 25 marker, etc., you will do this twice because you will have a for paragraph and an against paragraph depending on what the question is. Now when the examiner is marking your essay, they want to see a few things come across really clearly. The first thing is they need to be able to see that you understand what the question is asking you. So your essay needs to be to the point and addressing the question. The second thing is it needs to be informative. So you need to be able to demonstrate the knowledge that you have about business. So this is where, you should really be talking about the key words or the key phrases that you're talking about. You should start off with a definition, for instance, and show the examiner that you've got the knowledge to be able to answer this question. You need to be able to pose some solutions. The other thing that the examiner wants to get from you is they want to be able to see your thinking. So they want to be able to grasp how you've got to your answers. So if you're saying A leads to B, you need to be able to tell me how. So for instance, if you say to me that a market map will help a business owner understand, where they should start their business in the market, well, then you need to be able to explain that a little bit more. And you need to be able to say, well, they will position all the competitors in that market map, maybe on price and quality, for instance, and they can see where the gap is. And therefore, they can position their business there. So you want to be able to demonstrate to the examiner that you know what you're talking about. Finally, your essay needs to be well balanced. And that means that you can understand, even when you're posing an argument, that you know there are limitations to your argument. No matter what you suggest to the business owner, there will be some drawbacks. It might be that it costs too much or takes too much time, but you need to show the examiner that you've got some balance and that you understand what the drawbacks are to every solution or every answer you pose, and that you're not naive. So when starting your essay, I would always start off with the definition of the key word that is in the question. The reason for that is it gives you a little bit of thinking time, but also it stops you muddling up your answer. Because if you start with a definition, you have a really clear idea of what the question is asking you, or the key word that or phrase that your essay should be wrapped around. So get really clear about the key words in a question and define them before you begin. The rest of your paragraph will be structured around PEELH. That's PEEILH. That stands for point, evidence, explain, impact, link back to the question, and however. So let's start with point. Over here, you want to mirror the question. So if the question says, does a cash flow forecast ensure success? You start your answer with, a cash flow forecast can ensure success for a business, or a cash flow forecast doesn't always ensure success for a business, depending on which paragraph you're doing, the for or against. But you want to mirror the question because one of the things in the mark scheme talks about whether you address the question directly. And if you do that, then the examiner will really struggle to say that you're not doing this part of the mark scheme, you're not addressing the question. After you've made your point, you want to explain it. So you want to tell the examiner what you're thinking. So if you make the point, a cash flow forecast can ensure the success of a business, for instance, in response to the question, can a cash flow forecast ensure the success of a business? Your explanation will tell me why. And I've written here because it can highlight any cash flow issues a business may face and allow them to make amendments beforehand. What this does is it clearly shows the examiner that I know how a cash flow forecast is used. I know what I'm talking about, Mr. Examiner. So you can make sure that you give me all those knowledge points that you've got in your mark scheme. So explain your point. If I was to give you another example, for instance, if there was an exam question that said, how does market research ensure the success of a business? I'd make my point and say market research can ensure the success of a business. And then I'd explain that the reason for that is because it allows the business to understand the needs of the market and its customers, and then ensure that they meet them so that they can be successful. So you're just always explaining your point to show the examiner that you know what you're talking about. Now I go on to providing some evidence. Try and use something from the case study to support your answer. If there is nothing in the case study, you can use some industry knowledge that you've got about the industry. So for instance, for the 25 markers, if there's no case study, Or you can try and use some figures as well. That's always really good. If the case study is giving you some figures that support what you're saying, then use those figures. Preferably, try and use a bit of both. Try and use something from the case study and your own industry knowledge as well. The impact bit is your chance to explain to the examiner why what you're saying is important. Why is it important for this business? What would happen if what you are saying happens? So, over here, I've given you the example. A cash flow forecast can ensure the success of a business because it allows them to make any amendments beforehand if they're going to have any cash flow issues. The impact of this is that the business can avoid going into overdraft or unarranged overdraft and paying unnecessary interest charges to the bank, which will further impact their finances. So tell me why what you're saying is important. How is it going to affect the business that you're talking about? Then give me a link back. So link back to the question. And the reason for that is twofold, really. Number one, again, you're addressing the question. And that is a key part of the mark scheme. Are you constantly addressing the question? Are you staying on track? But I don't know about you, but when I'm writing long essays, such as 16 or 25 markers, sometimes I forget what the question is. And this gives students the ability to just gather their thoughts once again and mirror the question one more time so that before they go on to the second paragraph, they are reminded what the question is. And that has, I know several times when I've been marking exam papers, has allowed students to then refocus. So sometimes they lose track in the first paragraph about what they should be writing about, but then they gather their thoughts again and then get back on track. So it's really important to link back to the question and mirror the question. Finally, you've got the opportunity to do a however at the end of your paragraph. This will give you the opportunity to pick up some evaluation points as well. What you're doing in your however is that you are showing the examiner that you know any suggestions that you make have drawbacks. Imagine you are a business consultant and you go into a business. If you only give them one option and they do it and it's not successful, they will fire you. However, one way that you can protect yourself is provide an option, but tell them what the drawbacks are going to be. And there's always drawbacks. That can be money, that can be not unreliable data. So we know with cash flow forecasts, we know that businesses often face unexpected challenges. We also know that cash flow forecasts are only good if they are based on reliable information. So for instance, I can't do a cash flow forecast for a newsagent based on what happens in a clothing retail store, because what I should expect in terms of money coming in and going out would probably be completely different. So they're only as good as the information that you put in. So I will highlight that to the business. So if you can do all of these things, if you can show the examiner that you've got the knowledge through your definitions, through your explanations of the points, if you address the question directly by making sure that you mirror the question in the point and also mirror the question when you're linking back at the end of a paragraph, if you can show the impact on a business of whatever it is that you are suggesting, and if you can also show what the drawbacks to what you are suggesting are, and show the examiner that you've got the business nous to be able to balance the pros and cons of what you are suggesting, you're onto a really, really good paragraph. And then you just need to repeat it a second time round for the other side of the argument.